Welcome back to Project Geekology, episode 81. I'm one half of your host, Dakota, and I'm joined as always with
Anthony.
And okay, so we've been on a roll lately of like trying to like pinpoint the episode title number or the episode number within like our show and whatever we're covering this week. So I looked up what X-Men characters came out in 1981 just to see if there was any crossover, and there is. Two characters that pop up in this movie, semi-big characters, actually some pretty big characters, were created and introduced to the world in 1981. I don't think you know, obviously, which ones they are, because I didn't know, but can you guess? Like, make two guesses.
Okay, I'll make a swing for the fences. Angel?
No.
We think... Pyro?
Yes. Pyro was introduced in 1981. Good guess. And another one that I didn't expect, Mystique. Mystique was also introduced in January of 1981. So
nice.
Very cool. We have some synergy with our episode number. But, we're covering X-Men The Last Stand. I called it X-Men 3 The Last Stand in last week's episode. It's not actually called X-Men 3 The Last Stand. It's just X-Men The Last Stand. And this will not be our last stand as a podcast. This isn't our last episode. We do plan to have an 80-second episode. So that's exciting. And I'm excited about that. But this is a fun one because it's kind of a movie that a lot of people have forgotten about.
Yes. It's also not, of the three X-Men films, it's not as favorable as the first two. The second one being the one that people like the most.
Yeah, I would say
and
that's true.
The first one, you always gotta love the first one because, it introduces X-Men to the large screen and does a really solid job in bringing a lot of these characters to life, and they really build a lot on that in the second one. And so some of that is lost a little bit in the third one. But I will say that after watching the third one, honestly, this is my first time seeing it in like years. It's been so long.
A decade or so for me.
Yeah, same here. Like, I think the last time I seen it was maybe a few years after it had come out and I seen it. I probably saw it again, and then after that was it. I feel, and we'll talk more about it, but I feel like this movie, there is a lot to like about it. I feel like there is actually a foundation of a solid film there, but there was some wonky execution that really kind of messed it up. But I do think that, like, their bones are there. You can see there's some strong foundation there, but it just doesn't land. So
we'll get to it.
Of course.
And actually, like, I think I do remember the last time I watched it. It was pretty much like when I began dating my now wife. She hadn't seen most of the movies that I had grown up to love. So none of the Lord of the Rings movies, none of the Star Wars movies, none of the X-Men movies, and there was a bunch of others. But I remember the X-Men trilogy, this one specifically, was one of the trilogies that, really was foundational, and like, you should probably watch these just because it kind of explains just my love of the X-Men and all that a little bit. And I remember, I think that was the last time I put it on.
So you actually saw it more recent than I did.
Probably, yeah. Even though that was like over a decade ago.
Yeah.
This was a while ago. But yeah. Anthony, what have you been up to this past week, my friend?
Watching X-Men The Last Stand and prepping for, as of recording, there's a convention going on this weekend that I'm going to be going to. By the time that this episode comes out, that convention would have already been done, but I'm pretty stoked. I haven't been to a convention since, I think, August of last year. Usually this convention that I'm going to is in January, but they had to shift the dates because they had to shift venues because it grew in size and outgrew its previous venue. So now they shifted it to May. So, I'm pretty stoked. It's been, I need it's time for me to take a little bit of time off of work and, go enjoy some geek culture. So I'm pretty
excited. What convention is it, Anthony?
It is called...
Tell the world.
It is called OtakuFest. It sounds a lot more geared towards anime, but I feel like a lot of these conventions, those types of conventions, really just anybody can go to it. Like, you don't have to be just an anime fan to come and enjoy it. But it's cool. You get to meet a lot of these voice actors and actresses that have been around, honestly, like, even from your youth. So
Yeah, I remember my first anime convention. I don't even remember what year that was. It's probably, I think I went in 2006 to the Anime Expo in Los Angeles, maybe? That was, you had to be an anime fan to really appreciate that. Like, that was like
Straight
anime,
up, yeah.
You know,
yeah.
that was just straight up anime. Like, the closest thing to not being anime was probably like Final Fantasy like stuff. But yeah, that's cool, man. And it is exciting to hear that other conventions are growing in size. And yeah, I'm excited to hear what you do and how the trip goes. So
Absolutely, yeah. Now
next time
there'll be an update on the next episode, and
awesome.
Yeah, man. You know, I showed you recently that I don't think we spoke about it, did we? Or I think we had recorded just before my PC case came in.
Yes. How could I forget? Dude, you guys don't understand how big this PC case is. He put it on his kitchen counter and it's like double the size of my computer. It's nuts. It's just the case, and it's a big Persona case, but yeah, it looks really cool.
It's cool. Yeah, the panels that the artwork, the characters are on, that's tempered glass, dude.
Really?
Yes.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, I've never had a PC with tempered glass. It's usually just been like, you know, like an acrylic panel or something like that.
So I don't think there's any like, you know, actual pros to having tempered glass panels, right? It's just cool.
Not
right?
that I know of. I mean, I didn't really research it. I mostly got it because, like, I mean, it's cool. I mean, how many times have we talked about the Persona series? I'm like, dude, like, why wouldn't I get this case? I saw it. I'm like, dude, like, I'm getting this. And yeah, man, there's probably some pros to it. Maybe heat escapes through it a little bit better than, I don't know, plastic. I'm not too sure. I mean, dude, shoot, the way the heat leaks through the windows in the Miami summer, I'm pretty sure the reverse could happen. Well, I don't know. We'll see, because it traps in. You know, it does trap in heat too, so.
You're going to have to get some nice fans in there.
Oh, yeah, no. I'm going liquid cooling, so.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Yeah, I saw the pictures. Have you posted them online for the world to see? Or
no. I'd rather wait until
rather keep your anonymity.
Yes.
Wait until the full picture.
Wait until
emerges.
Wait until like the actual final product is finished, and I'm hoping to get everything in the PC built, you know, within the next like, you know, month or so. I should be getting in. I'm gonna start ordering parts soon, so
nice. Awesome, bro.
I'm excited. But yeah, man, so yeah, no, just that and gaming, man. Always gaming. Always be gaming. But you know that.
What are you gaming?
I have been gaming per Yakuza.
Oh yeah, you got that bundle, right?
Yeah. Dude, I mean, was it the first 7 games for like 40, and the 2 newest ones, the Yakuza Like a Dragon, that one was like 12, and then the brand new one was like 40 something. So I was like, man. So I've been playing through that. Those games are pretty cool. I've been enjoying it. I think I had mentioned it before. I think Yakuza Like a Dragon is when the gameplay kind of shifts from a beat 'em up to a turn-based RPG type game.
Really?
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. I've seen gameplay and I'm like, this gameplay is like so much different for like, cause you're button mashing in this one, like in these like older ones. So, but yeah, no, I've been enjoying them. They're really cool games, and there's a lot of like a really good story. There's a lot of humor. It's real fun. I enjoy the series. My friend recommended it to me. I had gotten that first bundle and I enjoyed the first one, or Yakuza 0, so much. I'm like, dude, let me just get all of them while they're on sale. And so yeah, I'm gonna play through them. Probably not in a straight line, you know, because I like to play other games, but you know, I'll have them in my backlog. So, but yeah, other than that, man, what have you been up to? You told me a little bit before we got on to recording, but I'm not too sure if you want to reveal that yet.
Yeah. So I just sent Anthony a picture of a working, am I going to say the T word, timeline? Maybe.
It might blow up this episode.
So it might blow up this episode. I am beginning work on a visual timeline for Star Wars. I don't know in what way it'll manifest at this point. And that's kind of why I'm like tentative to talk about it, just because the Star Wars universe, I've talked about this a number of times, is so massive. It's difficult to put into a singular timeline. So when I create visual timelines for my videos, there's always, like I have footage and all that, but I also have a visual timeline for those of you who don't watch Geek Critique videos that, I pinpoint different images onto, and I create a visual timeline that you can download and see roughly where, Captain Marvel takes place as opposed to Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk, etc. And I've done that for Marvel. I've done that for James Cameron's Avatar. I've done it for the Monsterverse. I've done it for Frozen. The thing with Star Wars is that it's so big that even the longest timeline that I can make within Photoshop doesn't really give me enough room to add everything. And it's not just movies, it's not just TV shows, but there's tons of comics. There's new Star Wars every single week, especially if you're a comic book fan. There's at least 3 to 4 different Star Wars titles that come out a month in terms of just comic books. Then you have short stories that appear in the Star Wars Insiders. Then you have video games that come out pretty sporadically, but they're huge things. And then of course the films and everything that comes out around them. So I am testing different ways to manifest a visual timeline, and I think I found a cool way to do it. I'm not going to talk too much about it just yet, just because I'm not 100% certain on it, but shrinking it down in size, the format is appealing to me. I think it could potentially be something that's not only a cool downloadable piece for fans, because all of my timelines are available for my fans to download. If I do it right, I could probably even print these, like have like an actual printable timeline, because this is kind of, I don't know, it could be that, and I want to do it right, but I don't know how to do that right yet at this point. So as far as the Star Wars timeline goes, don't expect a big Star Wars timeline from me just yet, but I want to do incremental entries into the Star Wars canon. Maybe a whole video for a single year within the canon. There's 4 or 5 titles per year. I can kind of stretch that out, talk about the themes of what's going on in that title, and slowly plot out these titles within my visual timeline. And I think that's where I'm going.
I could see that. Like, it's going to take something that can be exhaustive, which is like taking the entire Star Wars universe, which is expansive, and
making it manageable.
Right. And yeah, exactly. And taking pretty much like each era and kind of going over it and slotting whichever media is within that era, and talking about that specific timeline and the things that happen in that timeline. And then I guess down the line you can have like one major video, and instead of like talking about the minor details, like, hey, this era slots here, and give like a general description of like, what happened here, and then this era slots here. This is the entire timeline as it stands now, where instead of doing it all in one gigantic episode, which, I mean, honestly, if you were going to do that for a Star Wars episode, that would be like probably over an hour long.
Well, I mean, my Monsterverse timeline was an hour long, and that's only 4 films, Star Wars
is a lot more.
If I do it the way that I've been making my Star Wars content recently, it could get pretty crazy pretty quick. If I do it the way I've been doing my timelines recently, like my Monsterverse and my Frozen timelines, I really like pulled that apart and made a narrative that wove throughout each of the stories. If I do that with Star Wars, I could easily see that being like a 10-hour video.
Dakota is going to be in the background with a cork board looking insane.
Yes, I'm going to be the guy with like the strings attached to different Post-it notes.
Yeah, you're going to look insane. Like, oh my gosh, okay, so this scene in this episode of Clone Wars is calling back to this, Oh my gosh, dude.
Notice the boots that Darth Maul is wearing in this shot.
Notice this frame of Count Dooku, and then look at this frame. This was setting this up for this moment. Like, oh my gosh, dude, that would be... Imagine...
Yeah, no, I can't go that crazy. But if I can do like a macro look at, like 2 to 3 minutes per title, I can make something pretty substantial, and I can use all that in the future to create a massive Star Wars timeline. Like if I already have all that recorded, if I already have the footage on top of the audio that I recorded, I can just combine it all together eventually. I think that could be a fun exercise in futility for me.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
So, cat's out of the bag. I am starting work on a Star Wars timeline. Again, I don't know how that's going to manifest. I also don't think that's going to be my primary focus moving forward, unless those smaller videos become popular. You know?
Okay. All right. So, you know, so that's a project that's on the horizon, and no definitive release date for it right now.
Yeah. I know I got to start getting back into my Marvel content, especially with Daredevil, Deadpool, and Wolverine coming out soon.
You're already doing Marvel content right now.
Yeah, actually I am. And maybe we should get into it. Speaking of, let's swing that right back around. X-Men, The Last Stand.
Not to be confused with X-Men 3, because even though technically it is X-Men 3, it's not.
Yes. The X-Men movies are so confusing when you actually like think about the different timelines that exist, because there's at least 3 different timelines, maybe 4 if you consider like the future in Days of Future Past, that occur, and you're all supposed to like remember all the stuff that happened in the other timelines because they kind of intersect or kind of bounce off of each other. But yeah, so we're not going to talk about all that just because we don't have time for that. What I like about this movie, and you know, there is a lot to like about it. It's not a great movie, but
it's a fun movie and it had potential.
Yeah, but what I like about it is that this is from the era where trilogies were meant to be trilogies, you know? Movie franchises at this stage, at this age of Hollywood, were really only meant to last 3 movies. So
yeah, I noticed that a lot. They did that a lot.
They went all out, and they did that with this. They went all out in this final movie. You know, they had a lot of ideas. They had a central theme of mankind versus mutants that they kept throughout all 3 movies, which is really impressive, you know, because it's a cohesive trilogy, you know? It may not be a great one, but the actual theme that they were going for, you know, it played out extremely well over the course of these 3 movies. And I really appreciate that. And, you know, when you watch a MCU movie, you don't get as grandiose gestures as you do in these earlier Marvel movies. Like, you're not going to have anyone move the Golden Gate Bridge in a Marvel movie, like a Marvel Studios movie. And the reason is kind of because
it's all connected.
It's all connected. It needs to make a little bit more sense in terms of real world logic so that this universe can continue. Because at the end of the day, like, they killed off 3 of the biggest characters in the X-Men universe in one movie. You know, they pushed themselves into a corner, like story-wise, and I kind of like that. You know, it was a clear ending. You know, I don't know. I might be rambling a little bit, but I have this feeling that I like the film because it isn't open-ended.
Yeah, and honestly, something that I miss about these earlier, just, you know, superhero films in general, is that they took risks, man. They got creative, and sometimes it paid off, sometimes it didn't. And, you know, a lot of the films nowadays they try to play it safe. You know, they try to play it with their cards close to their chest. And, you know, I just feel like a lot of them playing it safe results in something that's not as strong. Whereas when they get like a little bit more on the creative side, it's very enjoyable. Like Loki was like absolutely zany, but I loved it, man.
Yeah, it opens up more room for spectacle, and spectacle is fun. Like I said, you're not going to get anyone moving the entire Golden Gate Bridge, even though it was stupid. You know, it's a stupid thing, but you're not get those huge gestures that are like Hollywood movie, summer blockbuster, just fun. And I like that a lot about this movie.
And it feels like a summer blockbuster. Like, that's what those films were, you know? When you think of summer blockbuster, you think of movies like that. You think of movies like the Jurassic Park or the Jurassic World films, you know? And honestly, I really do miss that. I mean, like, we would get Marvel movies during the summer, but I felt like as we started to get oversaturated with them, it stopped becoming special like they were when these types of movies were coming out, you know?
Yeah, and I don't know why I've beaten around the bush with this term, but stakes. These movies have stakes, you know? Scott Summers dies pretty unceremoniously, but, you know, he dies. Jean Grey dies, and as well as Professor X.
So the Professor X scene was crazy.
When I told you last week that one scene... What scene was I even talking about in X2 that I thought was one of the best scenes in the X-Men trilogy?
Oh, was it the
Nightcrawler scene, I think. The Nightcrawler...
Were you talking about the opening where he
He's in the White House.
Right,
and
right.
He's trying to assassinate.
But I think that you were saying that that was the best scene, or were you saying that the best scene was in this movie? Because
We'll be back after a quick break.
I hate talking.
Do you love talking about any topic and are never frustrated during conversations? Then I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if there are topics that you avoid, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Do you know the definition of every word others use? I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if you are curious about the definition and historical usage of words, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Do you know about current events and other random topics? Then I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if you enjoy conversations on a variety of topics, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Listen to I Hate Talking wherever you get your podcasts.
Episodes drop every Thursday. Listen, like, and follow I Hate Talking today.
I was saying that scene is my second favorite scene. My favorite scene is when Jean Grey or Phoenix kills the professor.
Dude, it was so that scene was so insane, and it was so powerful.
It's
and
so extra.
It is so extra. It does show a display, and the thing is that you saw how strong Phoenix was, and that still wasn't even as strong as Phoenix can be, you know? Phoenix gets ridiculous, especially in the comics. So it's to see at least some of that was interesting. They still haven't been able to nail down Dark Phoenix exactly yet, but hopefully in the future, I want them to mess with other X-Men storylines before they try to approach this, you know?
Yeah, because they've done it twice now.
Right. Give it some time.
They've tackled it in the animated series. So yeah, they definitely have other stories to tell. There's 50 years of X-Men stories? I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot.
But most of the good ones are from Chris Claremont's run in the 90s. But anyway, what I would say, the reason I think the Dark Phoenix versus Professor X scene is so powerful. There's so many reasons why I love that scene so much. But I think a big component of that is the score. It's just so sweeping and powerful. The music that they play it a few times. Whenever it's Jean pushing back against the Phoenix, it's da na 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 na.
Oh,
and it's such a great. It's such a great theme, and we don't get enough of it in these movies, but it's so sweeping, da na 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 na. I could keep going.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
But it gives me goosebumps, it's so powerful. And then, you actually, accompanying that music, you're seeing Jean Grey completely take control of the entire neighborhood, basically. And she's ripping the foundation of this home while she's controlling everything that's happening inside the house.
The home is spinning in the air, and everybody's attached to the roof.
And can we just be honest here? The CGI was so good in these movies,
For its time, yeah.
I think, and I saw this on Twitter recently, but in the early 2000s, CGI was so new that studios didn't know how to cut corners, if that makes sense. And that's why those early budget film or earlier films with CGI had such huge ballooning budgets. But it looked so good, and they spared no expense. Everything, the water coming out of the sink as Magneto was pushed against it, the particle physics, as things disintegrated, the slow motion warping of Xavier's face as he stood up to Jean almost. That wasn't Jean lifting Xavier. He was standing his ground in that scene, just try to calm her down. So good, dude. And then he looks at Logan. Oh, and you feel for Magneto too. Obviously, he's so radicalized by the end of these movies, he gives up on Mystique shortly after she loses her powers. Right,
yeah, that is so insane. And she's, out of all the films, she's been the one that's been the most, she's remained faithful,
Yeah. It was a weird thing for them to do with Magneto there, but I love his reaction to Charles' death. He's freaked out.
Yeah.
And he even yells, "Charles!" He doesn't want Charles Xavier to die. And later on, he speaks to Pyro and says, my greatest regret is that Xavier died for our cause.
Yeah, like I said, especially from the first movie, that Magneto and Charles Xavier they obviously have their differences. Like you said, Magneto is, he's radicalized. He's really just anti-human because, humans are essentially at war with them. So, I mean, he does have a right to be upset and to want to have a fight. But there's also Xavier that is also, he's right and he wants to take the right steps. And he's like, he doesn't want people to fear mutants. He wants them to see that they're not so different from humans. But yeah, Magneto, even though that they have this push and pull relationship, they still have that foundation as friends. They've been friends for so long. They're frenemies, dude. But at the end of the day, they respect each other. They have a deep respect for one another. And Magneto really showed it. Yeah, I love that line that he says that Charles Xavier has done more for mutants than anybody.
Yeah, it's a really powerful. It's definitely one of the more powerful scenes.
Yeah,
but his behavior throughout these movies, Magneto specifically, was always kind of something that bothered me, because some things Magneto wouldn't do, he wouldn't, in the second movie, he and Mystique are in the jet and they're laughing at Rogue's hair. And, he goes, "I love what you've done with your hair." And, that's something that he physically did to her in the previous movie. He's not a bully, line. Yeah, he's not a bully, but they have to make him the bad guy, you know? And that's how they do it in a 2-hour movie.
They wanted to make him
which always annoyed me.
They kind of wanted to make him kind of comic booky,
I guess. But he was never like that in the comics, I don't think. He was always more just cool, calm, and collected, and a crazy idealist isn't the right word. I would, that's something that's more Charles Xavier, but he was more of a nihilist in the sense that he didn't think that humans were capable of change. But there are some really good performances in this movie. A standout one for me was Kelsey Grammer's Beast.
Oh yeah, I did like his. The Beast was really good in this. Not
only that, but the makeup. He looked legit, he looked like...
It didn't look corny.
The Beast.
It looked good, yeah.
It didn't look corny. And, as we saw with... Did you see The Marvels when it came out a couple months ago? Or it was last year?
Yes. You're talking about with Captain Marvel and Miss Marvel.
Yeah.
I
there's
saw
that scene... There's the scene with Monica Rambeau going into another dimension and seeing Beast there, played by Kelsey Grammer, again.
Oh, was that him?
But it was all CGI.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. It was him, but it was all CGI, So that's kind of another thing. That's one thing that we have to just accept nowadays, is just instead of the practical effects that you would get in movies like this, which look amazing, by the way.
That probably took forever.
Cheap out. Oh, I'm sure it took hours
to set that up. Yeah. I mean, I had seen that for what do you call it? Reels of studios putting makeup on Ahsoka and from Star Wars, and Vecna from Stranger Things, and it's definitely a crazy process. So I can imagine, especially back then, just practical effects. It looks good, but yeah, I guess for the sake of time
Mystique
and money,
is literally her whole body is makeup. That's got to be very
body
difficult.
Paint and stuff. Yeah.
That's gonna take hours. But they did a really good job with her look. But anyway, which is funny. I'm thinking about it now. Comic book characters are often very sexualized in terms of, there's always a lot of cleavage, always a lot of very little clothing, especially when it comes to female characters. But I can't remember a time in the comics where it was normal for Mystique to be totally naked. She's always wearing something in the comics. She has a white outfit.
Right. That's what I was thinking, that white outfit that she usually wears.
What? It's weird that, and I'm not asking that they sexualize all the female characters, but it's weird that they super sexualized Mystique, but didn't do that for anyone else, I don't know. It's just that's something that I thought about. Anyway, I don't think that would happen today. I think that was very much a thing of its time, just the Mystique look.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was definitely an interesting decision on their part to do that. But so and we hadn't even really spoken about what this film is about. I mean, we've talked about the war, but coming back to this film, I didn't even realize there's things that I missed even after seeing it a couple times all those years ago. But you know, this one, the war really ramps up because the FDA comes up with this cure. And I didn't realize that the cure was... Like, I remember there being a kid, but I didn't realize that the kid was Leech.
Mm.
And I thought that was crazy.
That.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And, you know, playing games like Marvel Snap, there's Leech in there. And I was like, oh, you know, that's really crazy. Like, I didn't realize that Leech was in this film. Yeah, like, Leech has, like, that ability to, like, negate powers, you know? And that's what he does in the game. And it was that moment that Beast visits him and he goes to shake his hand and like you see the human.
Oh, that was cool.
That was a really cool effect. I like that.
And it's a really good way of expressing his particular mutant powers is, you know, proximity based. It wasn't necessarily him entering the room, but him getting like maybe 5-6 feet towards him was enough to neutralize his mutant DNA, at least in his hand, you know, like it was interesting. And then they were able to play off of that with both Kitty Pryde's and Juggernaut's power, which genius. I think that was a genius thing that they did, you know, two people who could very easily break this kid out of jail or out of this like prison that he's being held in, specifically with their powers, but they cannot do it because he neutralizes their powers. I love that. It's such a good concept. I wish they would have played on it a little more or, you know, maybe even explained it a little bit more. Because I think it might have been a little too ambiguous for some people. Like, why could Juggernaut break into the room but not break out? Oh, it's because his powers were neutralized when he got close to the kid. Stuff like that.
Right. So, like, with each film, we get characters and then we lose some of them in the next film. And that's the case with this one. Like, we don't have Nightcrawler in this one. But... yeah, we get...
That's true. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, where did he
go? I always thought that was odd. Like, I was like, where did Nightcrawler go?
Because there's that scene when they're all getting dressed and ready to leave, and they're like, there's only 6 of us. And I'm just like, you have a school full of superpowered people. You can't find outfits for the rest of them? Come on. Obviously, you don't want to bring students into battle.
Right. But yeah, we get Angel... and we get Beast. So Hank McCoy has always, like, he's been, like, in the films, but not in this capacity. And, we get a couple others, but we get Juggernaut. What were your thoughts of Juggernaut's portrayal in this film?
Well, talking about portrayals is kind of fun with these early X-Men films, just because so many of the characters are just interpretations of the comic book counterparts.
Some of them, like, look like cosplays, you know?
If I remember correctly, Juggernaut isn't even actually a mutant. I think his suit amplifies, you know, his physical attributes, and I think that is... if I remember correctly, he's Charles Xavier's brother, who didn't have any mutant powers, who amplified his own strength. You know, his brother had the brains, he had the brawn.
Like, when he has momentum, he can just, like...
Exactly. And so, in this iteration of the character, he... is just some guy who has a mutant power to break through walls at momentum. And that's fine, I guess. It's fun. You know, I had no issues with it.
Right. Like, it was a liberty that was taken that, to me, wasn't... It wasn't like you were disrespecting it. Like, because in the comics, like, these characters could always, like one day you could be like, you could find out like, oh, you know what, Juggernaut, like they find out, oh, he did have a mutant power and this is what it was.
Right. Yeah. Like they're doing that all the time. Most recently with Miss Marvel. She's a mutant now in the comics, or so we're led to believe. Maybe she's like a mix of both. I don't know. Nobody really knows. But yeah, you have other portrayals like the Phoenix character. I think they just go straight into Dark Phoenix. You know, it's just like one personality. It's just like this angry Phoenix character who just revels in pleasure and anger and getting what she wants. What is interesting is that they don't make the Phoenix this cosmic entity that, you know, possesses and controls Jean through her powers. Instead, they explain that her powers were so strong as a child that she developed a second personality as she was trying to control her powers. And that second personality manifested in the Phoenix persona. And that's the route that they took. So it's kind of like, this is not a good portrayal of Phoenix, but there were some good scenes with this portrayal of Phoenix. Does that make sense? Like that scene in that house when she's ripping it apart is top tier superhero scenes, period for me.
That was good too. And the moment that Storm and Wolverine come to the lake and they first find Jean,
that was cool.
Like the
that
floating rocks and stuff. Like, dude, that was a really sick scene. Like, there was some really cool, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, you know, there might have been some portrayals that might have not been ideal, and this film might have not been the strongest. But if you look at the story, like, there was the foundation there. There was, like, a good idea. It's just they had a hard time executing it in, like, maybe the way that they wanted to.
And it's also short. It's a shorter movie. It's an hour 44 minutes with credits.
Isn't that weird? Like, that was a standard back then, and now you wouldn't even dream
that was a standard, yeah.
of a Marvel movie being under 2 hours, you know?
Yeah. And I'm not saying it makes the movie bad if it's shorter, but there's less time to flesh it out. And I can almost feel that there was more to the story, more that was probably filmed than we actually got. Like, Angel's story was heavily stunted. Like, we only got 3 or 4 shots of him throughout the entire thing.
Yeah.
And it was always just kind of like, this is this guy's son. This guy doesn't want to be a human. This guy needs protection. This guy protects his father. That's it. You know, that's his arc.
I really feel like Nightcrawler would have been really good for this film because he had really struggled, especially with his look. And I know that, like, Rogue and him could have definitely been like those in that camp, like, oh, I want this because I want to live a normal life, you know? And that character was already established in the last film. You know, you don't have this whole other character that just, they really don't even show much of this individual. It's just some guy with wings, you know?
What do you think about Rogue going ahead and getting rid of her powers? That's another big thing that happens in this movie that, you know, wouldn't necessarily happen in the MCU. I don't think, you know, like, they've kind of put that character into a corner and that's the end of her line, you know, in terms of storytelling. Well, maybe not, because the end kind of shows Magneto moving.
Right. I was actually going to bring that up, that, like, the cure might be a temporary thing. It might be more along the lines of like a vaccine rather than like a complete cure. And so it's like, if you want to maintain a normal life, you'd have to come like every once in a while to like re-up on it. But
it's like Botox, everybody. It's not permanent.
But I thought it was cool that the soldiers in this movie, they were preparing for Magneto, so they were using like plastic weapons and stuff. I thought that was like a cool thing that they did.
And I like that he was like surprised that they, you know, didn't bring normal weapons. He's just like, oh, they're learning.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah. It's so crazy, like, how much he looks down on like humans.
Yes.
Like they're like primates, like learning to speak or something.
Primates learning how to use tools. Yeah. I really enjoyed... What did I really enjoy? Oh, one thing they don't explain, but I find is really interesting, is when Logan and Storm show up at Alkali Lake, and it's, you know, all those rocks are floating. When they first get there, it's super misty. Like, everything's, like, vaporized, you know?
Yeah.
And while they don't say it, it's kind of implied that Jean repressing Scott Summers' concussive blasts, concussive rays, whatever, made him explode and create this huge, you know, like, he vaporized all that, like a chunk of water in that vicinity, which is what caused that mist. They never explain it, but that's my headcanon. I don't know if that's ever been explained, like, in, you know, behind the scenes or whatever.
That's an interesting theory, and it definitely could work.
Because, again, Jean is found unconscious, so, like, maybe there was a big explosion, you know, as he blew up.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there is definitely some stuff. And like you said, with it being short, this film does suffer from it being rushed. Like, when the film starts, it feels okay. Like, it feels like they're moving at a pretty decent clip, not too fast, but, you know, maybe a little bit faster than the other ones. But that's because, like, a lot of these characters were already established. But it's like, once you hit maybe halfway through the film, it's like they just put it on fast forward and, like, you're racing.
Yeah. It's cool the way that they were able to... They told so much in so little time. And I kind of respect it in a way, you know? Like, they had so many ideas with this movie, you know? Like, there was the idea of Hank McCoy being a representative between the governments of the world and mutants.
Right,
Cool
right.
idea.
Yeah, he was like an ambassador.
He was an ambassador. We had this kid who was capable of creating the cure. We had this guy whose son turned out to be Angel, who wants to cure his son and ultimately finds this kid who has the cure and creates a cure, which in turn radicalizes a big group of mutants to push against the government and destroy not only the cure, but the kid himself, so that it can't be weaponized, which it is. There's so many moving parts. I haven't even talked about any of the X-Men yet. Then you have Jean Grey turning into the Phoenix. She's back from the dead. Scott Summers is completely
Gone. Dead,
but overcome with grief in the beginning, which kind of incapacitates his ability to be a teacher. So Logan takes over for a little bit. They have a little battle in the danger room.
Yeah, that was cool. That it's almost like they were nodding to what they wanted to do in the future because they were fighting the Sentinels in there.
Yes. And we had the character of Trask, who in the upcoming movies, I think in Days of Future Past, Peter Dinklage plays Bolivar Trask. But in this movie, it's one of the president's aides. It's the black actor, I forget his name. But he's Bolivar Trask in this one, who is eventually the creator of the Sentinel program. So you have a whole bunch of little things that this movie brings up, and it creates a narrative around all of that. It has flashbacks to Jean's being found by Xavier and Magneto. I can keep going. Like, I'm just thinking about these random little things on the spot and how they were able to just like mash all of this together into a semi cohesive movie. It was, like you said, all the parts to a good movie were there. I think they wanted to go big. That's the thing. They wanted to go big.
Yeah. They were trying to do too much.
That's kind of what happened with Spider-Man 3.
Yeah, oh, dude, Spider-Man 3's oversaturation of just... They try to put in all these different villains in there, man. Too much.
But you know what? I think what's cool about Spider-Man 3 is it's actually held up better than people remember it, just because there's style to the filmmaking. Sam Raimi's an actual great filmmaker.
Yeah.
Even though it's not a great film, it's fun to look at.
Right. I mean, story-wise, it might not have been all together, but it's fun to watch. Like, the story might have not been all there. It was kind of like a hodgepodge of different things, but dude, it was fun to watch. That last fight that they had was really fun to watch. It's always fun to watch, when the mutants are like fighting, seeing all their powers. Everybody loves a good fight scene, man, and I felt like this movie delivered some good fight scenes, man.
Absolutely. So we gotta start talking about what we are going to be covering next week, because I don't think we haven't talked about it.
We have not.
What we're going to be covering. Should we continue this X-Men train as we roll ever closer to Deadpool?
We could. Yeah, we could.
Wolverine?
I don't think we have anything that we want to break it up with. So, I mean, I don't see the harm in doing another X-Men movie. Maybe we could do something else after that and then kind of hop back onto the X-Men train. I mean, because we have July is when the Deadpool 3 comes out, so... Yeah,
so we got a couple months, but if we keep breaking all these episodes up, we're gonna
run out of time. True. Yeah, that's right.
So, should we bite the bullet and review X-Men Origins Wolverine next?
We could. I mean, it's got your boy in it.
It's got our boy. So, it's the first ever, film appearance of Deadpool. Quote unquote Deadpool.
Actually, I have a fun story about that movie. I'll talk about it next time. But
okay, all right. Any final words on The Last Stand? Any last stand words on The Last Stand?
So I'm going to make my last stand and say that while this movie might not be the strongest of the three, it has a good foundation, maybe some poor execution, but it's still fun to watch. I think if you haven't seen this movie in a long time, maybe watch it again and, just watch it without expectations. Just watch it knowing that you're going to enjoy, an early 2000s Marvel movie with, cool fights in it, So, how about you?
I kind of agree. It's a lot of spectacle. There's a lot of moving parts. Not all of it lands as well as the Golden Gate Bridge landing on Alcatraz. But I was such a stupid. It's fun to watch, man, and I'm happy that we are going through these movies because a lot of them I haven't seen in a very long time, and this one included. So like I don't think I would have had reason to watch this had it not been for the podcast, and I'm glad I did, because
same.
I found more to enjoy in it, with time, having the luxury of time passed at this point. It's almost a 20-year-old film at this point.
Right. And like
it's 2006 that this came out, so this 18 years ago.
Right. And honestly, like that's like the biggest thing. And like, we established this podcast for that reason. I mean, while we do want to talk about new content that comes out, we do want to go back and talk about a lot of the stuff that shapes us. And actually, the funny thing about this, and just like quick little addition to this, is that after this film, yesterday I decided to watch the old Hulk movie, the Eric Bana one. And I didn't realize that Kevin Feige was a part of that one too. Dude, like that man was like, he had his hand in like every, I don't know if he did it. Did he do any of the Spider-Man movies?
All right. So let me look this up, because you're going to be surprised by how many.
No wonder why no wonder why he's like the head of the MCU.
Yeah, he was definitely there from the beginning. All right. So I'm going to go to producer credits for Feige. You ready for this?
I am. Hit us.
My guy literally has only ever done Marvel stuff. I'm looking at it now. All right. X-Men. He was an associate producer. Daredevil. He was a co-producer. X2, co-producer. Hulk, executive producer. The Punisher, executive producer. Spider-Man 2. He didn't do Spider-Man 1. Spider-Man 2 is an executive producer. Elektra, co-producer. Man-Thing, Fantastic Four. X-Men The Last Stand. Spider-Man 3. Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer. All of that was before he was involved in Marvel Studios, and then of course Iron Man came out.
Did he do Incredible Hulk? Because I mean, technically that was, I mean, maybe not timeline wise, but like, I mean, it is the first MCU movie to come out.
Oh, he did do the Incredible Hulk.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, he did do the Incredible.
So
Hulk.
He's been there since the beginning.
No, pretty much. Yeah, he didn't touch any of the Blade films, but that's going to change shortly. Very true. One last thing I want to talk about that I was trying to mention somehow naturally in the conversation was, I thought it was interesting that instead of giving Kitty Pryde and Colossus the relationship that they have in the comics, they chose to kind of make a love triangle with Rogue, Bobby, and Kitty. I don't know that I liked that, because I always really liked the juxtaposition of, Kitty Pryde, who can go through hard objects, and Colossus, who is like the hardest object. I think I always kind of liked the juxtaposition of that, I guess. But giving Rogue the catalyst to push herself to take the cure was interesting, and I don't hate it, but I don't like it either. I just wanted to mention that briefly.
I believe in my head canon says that her powers will eventually return in that world.
You know how at the end of Marvel movies, like after you watch the credits, it'll be like Iron Man will return, or Star-Lord, or the Guardians of the Galaxy will return. It's just Rogue's powers will return.
I mean, this film does have like a post-credit scene.
Does it?
It does. Wait,
I skipped it.
Wow, Dakota, why would you do that, man?
I didn't know it was in there.
Remember that guy that they showed in the coma?
No.
There was that like doctor lady named Moira, and there was some guy that was like in a coma that she was attending to. Charles is in that guy's body. Like, it's like they were talking about mind transfer. They were talking about mind transfer in the film. That happened.
I totally forgot.
Yeah.
I totally forgot about that scene.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for bringing that up. I got to go back and watch that right now.
It's
Guys,
very brief.
Thank you for listening to us here for our 81st episode of Project Geekology. If you want to listen to more of our episodes, we got a whole bunch of others, on a whole bunch of different topics, from books to TV shows to video games and a lot of movies, mostly movies. But guys, thank you so much for listening. If you want to check out our socials, whether it be our personal socials or the show's socials, you can find that in the show notes. And wherever you're listening to this for those of you listening on Deezer, what's going on over there? Like, why are we getting over 50% of our listens from Deezer? What is going on with that Lilo and Stitch episode? Why is that getting such crazy listens? Was it that good?
Y'all love Lilo and Stitch. And shout out to everybody that listens. But yeah, there's been a lot of Deezer folks. So mostly
the Deezer crowd. Come on, let's be honest here. But whatever podcast application you listen to, please be sure to rate us a nice 5 stars. Maybe, if you're not listening on Deezer, give us a nice 5 stars so that the listen count and the download count per episode will increase,
Yes,
thanks
it
to
helps
whatever
push us
algorithm.
up in the algorithm.
It helps push us up.
Yes, the more
so
you
we're not
rate,
just...
the more you show love and you rate us and put reviews and stuff, it helps us out.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks guys.
Goodbye, y'all.
See you next time.